Hello, my name is Mr.GUILLOUX and I have a degree in electricity and electrotechnics, also known by some people as the engineer. I will show you how in 2021 and 2022 I built the first fully functional replica of the central console from the movie Taxi 4 and Taxi 5. This project was carried out as a part of a professional activity that has since ended. The company is no longer in operation today.
Tu veux connaître mon rêve? Ouais. Écoute ça.
It all started for me back in February 2007 when I discovered Taxi 4 in theaters. I already seen Taxi 1 and Taxi 2, and since I particularly liked the second one, I was curious to see this new installment. What fascinated me in the Taxi saga was the transformation sequence. The fact that in the earlier movie it was done with practical effects rather than CGI made it feel magical. Even though half of the effects in Taxi 4 were CGI, one thing that wasn't was the central console. Fast forward to 2021. At that time, I was self-employed in my free time, between once again working on accessories for my 406. Memories of Taxi 4 motivated me to create a prototype demo, primarily as a showcase pieces for my shop. I went to a junkyard, picked up the iconic 407 Elven Grey, and thus I began modeling the very first replica of the central console. As far as I knew at that time, no copies exist apart from the original ones. Since then, at least one other replica has been made, but it wasn't my work. Back then, I did own a 407, so I couldn't take precise measurements except for those from junkyard cars. Obviously, I wasn't going to bring a prototype there, so I relied on scattered photos, freeze frame shots, and I did my best to replicate the buttons and screen printing as accurately as possible, and that's how this prototype was born. At first I used squared red illuminated push buttons, since in the movie the buttons were triangular and illuminated. Then one day someone reached out to me with a link to the correct triangular buttons. Unfortunately they weren't illuminated, but it was already an improvement. I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, but if you recognize yourself, thank you again. The Turbo 1 and Turbo 2 function on the console reflect the fact that unlike the 406 petrol V6 engine, the 407 featured a twin turbocharged diesel. A major mistake I made, just like air intakes, was wanting to help the community. I shared the prototype file on thingiverse.com. It did take long before I was warned that people had started selling them without authorization, despite the fact that the file's license didn't allow it. In this context of copyright infringement, someone making a replica was looking for a functional console. Meanwhile, I wanted to prove that it was possible. Here's an archive explaining the original project. So this central console, so we had all the photo file, we only had the left part, front and rear view. We don't know how they did it inside, nor designed it. We already know that, so the facade, you have all the screws. It allows maintenance without taking everything apart again. That's very well seen. In itself, on the jack part, electric, how they did it There is no information now to date. So we started completely from scratch. Start of construction, so in December, the assembly of the console took about 2 months, roughly January and February. March and April we did the first level of electronics. In the original order, of course, only the two turbo goods are connected in a small box with two potentiometers that adjust them. And so the display that is there never works whether in the 4 or the 5.
Donc là, on appuie sur le bouton, ça sort tout l'ensemble écran en tableau de bord, avec une position, quand on fait un code sur le clavier, qui initialise tout le tableau de bord pendant 5 secondes, et après c'est prêt d'utilisation, soit avec tous les éléments qui allument des parties sur la voiture, qui sortent, ou qui se modifient. Et là on peut gérer les pressions de turbo additionnelles, droite et gauche, turbo 1, turbo 2, comme on a envie. Il y a une position également pour le coffre, du coffre avec 3 positions, 0, 1, 2, 3.
On this order, it was planned to make a single block in functionalities, so it was planned control in Bluetooth, possibly control by remote control. So in functionality, we was sure and certain to able to do, there were the warnings, the remote locking, and the remote start. As additional features, the license plate flipper and the exhausts, which open and close. On that, we already have a pretty nice electrical harness. Possibly we planned the horn and the remote windshield washer. But for the horn it was not possible, and for the windshield washer it would be necessary to access the pump motor, which is located on the passenger right wing side, and since the bumper was condemned in some way. So it was not possible, but technically we could have done it. The system as presented at that time is simply the system that I made on my 406, which is a semi-multiplexed that you can also see in a video right here. And while this system there, apart from the exhaust, I knew how to do everything. For me, it was the opportunity to put the system that I had made on my 406 on a 407. So we are going to modify the plate flipper control box. So there, for the license plate flipper system, it was the simplest since we were able to pull wires from the box. So we have the control box, which is just here. So the power supply that has in the glove box, it's 12 volts, which is controlled by a relay. So everything to the system, it's protected by a fuse hub. And so at the level of the control box, so we have 3 buttons. So there is a button which does the front, button which does the rear, and so this is there were pulled it into the glove box, and so we connected it to a module of 2 relays like this. So it's 5 volt, so no risk that it overheats or that it burns. And so all that and go back up, we go from 4 wires to 2 wires and up in the button of the central console. And obviously this relay can later be controlled by Bluetooth. So there we modify the terminal, so there are original electronics. We forget we start again on a brand new system. So for the taxi sign, we have a large light bar. Finally, now there are 2 LEDs, so one green, one red on this type there. So we therefore reconverted into white LEDs in order to neutralize the standard for taxi sign, so that we have a LEDs strip, and so the A, the B, C and D, so which make 4 LEDs on the front and 4 LEDs on the back. So at the start on this point, we therefore try to take the original board, so to take each wires and to supply them one by one. So I removed at first therefore everything that is a microcontroller resistance, all that to locate the circuit, and well, it was a waste of time on this point then that it turned out that this printed circuit is very poorly designed. So suddenly we removed the board, this one we remove it, and therefore we connected therefore the LEDs directly. So instead of taking the board, each wire is independent, and therefore each LEDs work with each wire. So there you go, change of plan. So we had planned to leave so the one box, so simple enough to be able to remove in case of maintenance, good for a few centimeters. It will not fit, so suddenly we will integrate directly into the glove box. So little context and precision, since I did not necessarily film everything first. First of all, this famous plastic box which contained the initial component of the system. Then on it there was a DB25, which in a way is the ancestor of the USB, because it was used at the time among other by printers. 2 Bluetooth modules, one which had to be connected to the OBD2 to display the speed in real time, and the other with the Android car radio to receive and transmit the commands, and a whole bunch of connectors to centralize the functions with, among other things, relay. Then at the time I was left for the opening closing mechanism of the console with servo motors which have a load support of 50 kilograms and stop sensor which are found in particular on 3D printers, all fixed on a rod in metal. Obviously, this option, as although on paper seemed coherent, allowed me to realize that it was not viable. The other option was therefore to put an electric jack, but the one I had bought back, which was initially planned for a future retractable spoiler, was much too big. At that time, this mechanism was postponed. Then another problem, which makes everything I had initially planned fall into the water, the size of the glove box. Much too small for the box that I had initially planned. I remind you that at that time I didn't have a 407 and that I therefore left completely blind. If I had to do again, I would have installed it in the truck. But the final blow, which is real air conditioning, is that behind the dashboard of the 407 there is a large steel bar which is fixed to the dashboard and the bodywork, except that the console does not fit completely inside because of the sidebar. I was not very keen to cut this bar given what it implies, and I was ready to give up on a static model. However, it was the responsibility of one of the previous owners to cut it since it is not my car. The problem is that under the sidebar there was the entire electrical harness. You can guess that it was cut and that everything had to be resoldered afterwards. Personally, I lost days locating the wires one by one and resoldering. The glove box panel had originally been pre-cut by one of the previous owners as an homage to Taxi 3. Since the style and button layout were completely open to interpretation, I had full creative freedom over its design, especially since in Taxi 4 and 5 the glove box panel doesn't exist. I decided to integrate a switch for power indication showing that 12 volts supplied. Next was the main power switch, emergency stop. Since I didn't have the red button on the car radio, I pressed it inside the glove box. It serves the same function as in the movie, deploying the console from the dashboard. Beside it, there is another switch that allows manual control of the console movement in case the remote control is missing or the red button failed. Finally, I added toggle switch inspired by Taxi 1 movie, which activates the taxi sign and voice control system. Some of the Android screen mounting brackets had to be trimmed because they were obstructing the console. Trimming was still required if it was the original Peugeot 407 screen. So, following the first system saw from the box, since in the glove box it did not fit at all, so therefore it was necessary to start again a first time from scratch. Well, that was to be expected anyway when we attack blindly. So on the second improvised system, so almost at the minimum, knowing that on this first provisional, after 3 days of fatigue, the exhaustion, especially after all this unforeseen event. So first started from scratch. So everything starts again. So on the basic function. At that time was spotted so all the wires. So the plate system. Up. So the 3 lights were connected together, the green LEDs and so the 2 buttons that light up red, so these 2 buttons that were connected, and so the first circuit because of a wire short circuit and fried my first motherboard that I had planned. which could be redone but between two after interversion. The first interversion, so it is a taxi terminal connection. So there we will do some tests, so on the rise and fall of the central console. So when it is closed, so it will therefore encompass the entire dashboard, but after when it rises there will be daylight, so there we will put a cover. So the stop is not perfect, so it will be controlled as well, so in Bluetooth, manually through the glove box and by remote control. Similar to the cut wires, the actuator mounting and hinge placement were handled by one of the previous owners. They modified the actuator head, applied grease, and added a right guide for the up and down movement. If it had been my project from the start, I would have done it differently. Instead of a right guide, I would have mounted the actuator closer to the hinge. This would have saved space. 6 day, so third of this second part. So the console is in its final position with its RAM definitive. So its electrical diagram remains unchanged, only the potentiometer are deactivated, but it's not that annoying. The rest of the program takes place in the glove box. First, to disconnect everything, so the main functionality therefore of this central console are currently deactivated or even not functional, but that doesn't prevent since the wires are already pulled from. Restarting the machine later, so the idea is going to be a bit rather with the terminal on it, so what we are going to create a printed circuit which will take up the entirety therefore of all these wires, which is a monstrous mess. This intervention I did not specifically film it at all, but it focused on the improvement of the wiring in general, but especially with the raising and lowering of the central console. As said earlier, most of the functions are deactivated because once the raising and lowering system defined, it was time for me to study the beginning of my miniaturization with printed circuit. Another problem that was raised was at the power supply level. Indeed, I had connected to the positive of the car radio to minimize the risk, but the power required for the system produced a voltage drop. Therefore, it was necessary to run a cable to the positive of the battery. Of course, all this was protected by a fuse. We are not crazy to this point. Another problem specific to the user, this one having only Apple equipment. My Bluetooth module were not compatible with this device. I do not thank Apple for the obligation of the MFI and BLE. I also took the opportunity to carry out some 3D scan from the first version of a Xbox 360 Kinect. So there we connected therefore a new remote control temporarily, what we call the super remote control, which will be controlled later remotely. That is to say by Bluetooth, so the glove box will be functional. There will be just be 4 wires to connect. It will be good, and so the central console will be revised almost entirely, but at least it will also be functional there. So here is the electronic plate, the first electronic plate that I made. So you recognize well there I had put an RG45, so which was connected for the display. So there we have the 5-volt output, the ground, and so there you see so it had an electronic plate. There are cables there and here had to be connected, so here potentiometer, plate, button, 12 volt and 5 volt input. It's in two phases. There it's phase 1, so behind, in fact, there is a whole bunch of cables. In phase 2 we're just going to make an electronic board which will be just behind and which will control everything. So in the meantime we will have a command how to say semi-digital, semi-analog, so it works well. Now look, the screen which is just there burned out, but hey, that's a factory defect. While it happens, the display is a TM6037, which only requires 4 wires to function. Although Taxi 4 and Taxi 5 feature a grey industrial style display, similar to those found in early mobile phone or the first Game Boys, I chose the TM6037 because it looks aesthetically better and is more suitable for displaying real or simulated speed compared to what was used in the films. Unfortunately, this display caused me many issues. Several models had design flaws and burned out repeatedly. So I'm honestly not surprised that in the movies we never actually see it working ever. We have the two commands to modify the Turbo 1 and Turbo 2 gauges in accordance with the Taxi 4. Here we have, like in Taxi 5, the famous red button that sends the nitro, so this one lights up the exhaust. The possible commands in Bluetooth, so there is a choice. For example, if we say go, we will mark start to start, so for the moment it will not start the car, but it is plain, so we set the start command, and so there is a whole bunch of wires, and the goal of phase 2, so it will be to miniaturize this whole system while keeping features and even editing features. So we will see the vomit bag, while there normally it is the control of the jacks, but suddenly it was decided as soon as we will engage there, it will engage the vomit bags just behind. That's it for the little presentation, and obviously, while if we pressed the red button, it was during this intervention that I introduced what I call the Super Remote, a 16-button remote that works in 433 MHz frequency, long range, but I will explain that a little later. The vomit bags were originally designed for my 406, but they ended up being installed on the 407. Proper actuator adjustments were necessary as this had never been done electrically before. It was on this car that I successfully got the first working model. I am currently studying potential improvement to this system as I believe it deserves further development.
Ninja. Nyak. Ninja. Nyak.
You have just seen the first test of the voice start module. It is a small module manufactured by Heliac House which works in 5 volts. It allows to start the car by voice command with the Ninja and Nyak commands as in the 605 of Taxi 2.
Ninja. Le mot Nyak.
It also works with the demar and stops commands. The problem encountered with this module, which is finally
That shit is fucking trash, dog.
it was unable to decode several types of voice and function very poorly within a car with the echoes, vibration, and background noise of the engine. Hijacking a Google Home or an Alexa would have been ridiculous and would have added complexity. Since the filming of this video, new models have appeared much more efficient, therefore it is tempting to create a new voice start system without all its flaws. In this intervention, I introduced a new module by printed circuit for the display and the audio. Here is the new module. Here there was the Bluetooth module, two resistors for the Bluetooth. You had here a terminal block plus 5 volt, a ground terminal if I am not mistaken, 12 volt. The recovery of the display module, which was in RG45, vomit back control and plate control. So here is the main card which managed all this here, all the sound effect with a laptop speaker which was integrated into all this. The central console is finished. So here we put a small module that replaces the previous one. This module is compatible with the latest one, the other one was not. So this is a new control block. So with relays, electronic card, voice control, so we can say Ninja. And we can also say Demar. Here I bring all the power supplies to solder them like that. We will not touch them at all and will only remain the part that will be controlled by there to wire, and while we will be able to do tests. After that we will be good. So here we are inside where everything is finished. Here everything works and that is beautiful. Control from here, here, and now the famous big remote control. So here we have the control of the plates, the control of the vomit bag that we see right here. So here if we press it triggers the plates here. So we have the display there which puts the false speed, knowing that in the films you can watch it in slow motion. This display has never worked. Here it works. So long range remote control, given the antenna you will have understood. So buttons 1, 2, 3, it will be for the light. Here button 5, it will be later. It is not connected currently, but we will be able to engage the horn remotely. It is practical when we see such a pretty car. If someone has fun getting a little too close, beep! Here it will surprise. So after 6 and 7 warning here, obviously 7 lock. Here, then 8 and 9 will be the central console up and down.
Des vérins. Hop. Voilà. Nickel. Voilà. Hop.
10 will be, we will finally be able to remotely control the vomit bag.
À distance, les sacs à vomi.
14 and 15 are the license plate flipper, so if we press,
Si on appuie là.
we will be able to start the engine remotely, so now it's running. The garage is closed, we are not going to get poisoned, but this button there starts the car remotely.
Voilà pour le système qui est désormais.
That's it for the system, which is now complete. So we also have plenty of wiring planned for possible future use. If we activate the vomit bags remotely, and well, there's the LED that lights up there.
On a commencé.
Here we started at the beginning in December, and here we are in September without counting the hazards. Here is a complete system which is finished.
Très bien tout ce qu'il a fait avec le système électronique, c'est ouf.
T'as pas les épaules pour conduire un engin pareil.
Pas les épaules? Ah, si tu levais ton taxi.
You might have noticed the console in the LK 2000 music video. Before that, while the 407 was being transported to the shoot while I was on vacation, the glove box panel suffered an impact or was displaced, causing the system to stop working. I was prepared to step in and fix it on site, but my assistance was refused. Instead, I had to provide remote support, which made the situation much more complicated. This led to the next maintenance operation. I made a puzzle, let's say that. So what happened? By touching the USB port, which is right here, the USB port of the car radio, it sank, it went behind and it tore out a lot of wires. So there at the moment, see this passage, I finished the intervention because there was a lot of soldering to do. So we resume the function, we go down, we go up, it's perfect, and here the light, and you also have the rise, it's the same. Here you have the horn, plate and obviously vomit bag. There you go. And the false speed of the display. So it was repaired, no new functionality whatsoever. So here is the brain board which controlled the voice command, which controlled everything that was remote. I did find the remote control or the voice module, but there was also the Bluetooth function which is no longer there. No, it is no longer there. There it was, the brain, and following this intervention, the brain was removed to put, well, just the switches and a plate to control the display, and that's it. Everything that was remote was removed. So it was a big step backwards by everything that had been done. I went back to the initial operation, that is to say a display plate and manual controls.
Le fonctionnement initial, c'est-à-dire une petite afficheur et des commandes manuelles.
And so right here we have the signature of Sami Nasseri, the actor who plays Daniel in the Taxi series, and the French rapper Al Capone. And I can tell you it's funny to think that I sit in the same place where he sat. And with all the buttons, etc. What more could you ask for? To be in the same place as when I was little. I watched the film for the first time at the cinema, and from there to say that I read the same interior, it's something. It was the last time I saw this 407.
Non, c'est sympa ce qu'il a fait.
Putain, j'étais jamais enfin, je l'avais jamais vu de près.
Ça rentre,
D'accord, ça
ça
c'est
sort.
imprimé en 3D. Ok. C'est cool. Et
Ça
dessus,
rentre,
c'est
ça
resté
sort,
le truc
c'est
d'origine.
Alors, d'après les vidéos que j'ai vues, hein. Donc ils ont remis un truc chinois qui est un petit peu plus petit,
Ouais.
parce qu'il n'y avait pas d'écran à l'origine.
Ok.
Donc c'est un truc chinois. Et ils ont tout découpé derrière, ils ont coupé les fils et tout de manière à pouvoir faire.
Ok.
Attends, je vais te.
Bah c'est. Ah, tu peux le
Si
rentrer.
tu peux, en fait. Donc t'as les plaques qui se tournent, t'as le klaxon. J'ai dû débrancher un moteur.
Et ça peut rentrer dedans? Non.
Et ça, si. Alors, tiens. Attends, je sais pas comment on fait.
Avec
Mais en fait, ça cache tout. Franchement, c'est top.
Vas-y, roule. Parce que du coup, j'ai raté la fermeture. Ok, franchement, c'est pas mal.
Franchement,
C'est pas mal. Non, c'est bien, c'est bien. Beau job.
You've now seen the journey of my central console from its conception to its final appearance. Here's a summary of everything I did or didn't do inside this 407. Among the abundant features were remote control for window operation and windshield washer activation, a fake car lifting system using dummy actuators, a retractable spoiler mechanism adapted from 307cc. This conclusion is a bit difficult for me, so I'll start by once again thanking everyone who left kind and positive comments. As for the exact cost of the complete system, I can't disclose it for confidentiality reasons, but I can say that it was under 1,000 euros. Was this project financially profitable? No, it was actually a loss. Was it intellectually rewarding? Absolutely. In total, all this intervention amounted to 1.5 weeks of on-site work, including the first 3 days with no sleep. An estimated 240 hours spread between December 2021 start of design and September 2022 finalization, which is 9 months in total. Each time I had a 4-hour one-way trip, which is 354 kilometers. That adds up to 40 hours of driving and 3,540 kilometers. But that's just for the numbers. I'm not complaining because in the end I realized I had created something truly unique. Aside from the original, there isn't a second one. At last, not yet. Am I satisfied with it? No. No, because I believe I could have done even better, added more improvement, details, reliability, pushed it even further, just like Wi-Fi 4 or 6. I feel like I haven't yet reached the limits of what's possible. Today I have enough materials to build several more central consoles. I've also improved the 3D model over time. I've also recreated the radio facade from Taxi 4 and 5. However, I will not be sharing any 3D file to prevent unauthorized use or exploitation. This film has documented the design process from 2021 to 2024, leading to my version 2 of the central console. I am currently working on a version 3 which will not use an actuator but will still be fully functional. I also want to clarify that I do not take commission and will now work at my own pace, choosing my project carefully. And with that, this film comes to an end. This project was a mental challenge for me, but I hope you enjoyed watching this documentary. Feel free to comment, share and like, and don't hesitate to ask me technical questions. I will be happy to answer them.
Pchit, pchit, les rageux.